guys, welcome to the Silver Report. Here we are. It's Monday, February 13th, 2017. We have gold currently trading at $1,225.70. Silver, we have closed out for the day at $17.90. And let's get right into some of the economic factors because we have some big news today. First up on the block, we have the Austrian Chancellor. He's coming out and he's saying that that Europe and the European Union must ensure that the United Kingdom is in a worse situation when it leaves the bloc. Otherwise, it represents a capitulation, Austria's Chancellor said. And this is exactly what we've been talking about, the way that they manipulate world politics and the way they rob sovereignty from nations. And that's exactly what the European Union was intended to do. And that if one of the members wants to begin to exit, when we begin to see this Brexit, they must feel the pain. And more than this, the whole world must watch them feel the pain. And so what we're facing, his quote was, "A member of a club must have better conditions than somebody who isn't a member of the club. Our British friends must be aware that nothing else can come out of these negotiations." Unquote. Christian Kern told reporters in Brussels on Monday everything else would be a capitulation by Europe. And so we have the UK Prime Minister Theresa May. She prepares to trigger Article 50 next month. She's going to begin the 2-year negotiations on Britain's withdrawal from the bloc. The EU's other 27 governments are beginning to draw their own battle lines. The European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker told reporters in the same press conference that he's concerned that the UK could try to make promises to certain industries. And it is our common interest that there are no special arrangements, that Europe, that the UK is left wounded from what they feel is a shot against globalism. As we see these other countries rising up and begin to go through these same issues, wanting to separate from this. And we're facing the same thing going on in the United States right now. In fact, we're having some massive issues when it comes across investors withdrawing from the United States right now. We have on the block, and should they be invested in the United States? I mean, look what we're facing. Since the 2008 crisis, what we're facing is an average of 1.8% GDP growth since 2008. Recovery is anemic at best. Stock market is at its peak overvaluation. The consumer credit bubble is higher than its peak before 2008, and this is going to hurt. You see, how did we get into the issue in 2008? A housing market bubble, defaults. On credit for mortgages, failing mortgages, and these banks and mortgage institutions holding on to toxic mortgages. And so we have a 4% default rate, 11% default student loans, 8% auto loans. We're facing a massive loss of wealth in the United States after this bubble bursts. A lot of people will be suffering. We have some major issues forming where our support structure for our sovereign debt is failing. These banks, and we see Visa and American Express, are inflated with toxic accounts. They can never be paid. That's why these defaults are increasing. That's why consumer bankruptcies are increasing. Individual bankruptcies are increasing. These defaults are the new coming crash. And it's materializing now. While everyone else is busy watching their favorite soap opera, the largest economic crash to face mankind is dawning on us. This is much worse than 2008. This will affect every citizen in the United States, and by association, every country. In 2008, when we saw an abundance of failing mortgages, the only way for people to survive right now is credit. And that with low wages and unemployment that cannot, and employment, even if they are employed, that can't pay. These debt levels are much higher. When the news begins to leak that these major companies on the Dow are filled with fabricated dreams of payment. The holdings are toxic. When the news breaks, there will be blood in the street, Wall Street, and in all probability, your street. And this is the way they paint silver stackers and silver investors and preppers, as if they're not in touch. The funny thing is, they're the only part of the populace that is awake. That's because there is a war for your mind. Hearts and minds. That was the Iraq strategy, right? So this misinformation is a war. So stay vigilant. Stay attentive to what's really going on. We have investors flocking away from U.S. bonds. We see them increasing what it costs to hold U.S. bonds. We have Japan selling more, and they're in the news now. They're explaining that they need to focus on at home right now more than abroad. They need to focus on paying down and fixing their own economy. We have these trade talks taking place where we have our president of the United States, and he's correct, coming out and accusing them of being currency manipulators, of there being unfair trade, and there is. But the issue is, so much wealth has already been taken from the United States that at this point, they're the only thing keeping us up. We lose our jobs, we buy their products, they buy our debt. And so, really, we've been existing at their mercy so far. And so, what we're facing as countries around the world are beginning to drop U.S. sovereign bonds because they just don't see getting a return out of them, especially as our credit rating is dropping, especially as the yields for U.S. bonds. As we were speaking about France, this is how they crash economies. This is how they convert economies into third world nations. And so what we're seeing taking place in the United States right now is that the United States sovereign bonds are just not worth investing by foreign investors. We have China, that was one of the strongest buyers of U.S. government bonds. They don't really see themselves getting a return. They don't really see themselves getting a return. And because we've been in this condition for so long, where we have such a massive deficit in trade, we've created a monster of an enemy. We've created a very wealthy nation that is now a world economic power that controls events. And the same way that the EU, when the UK is beginning to leave the European Union, has come out and said these central bank empires, globalist empires, come out and they're saying, we must make sure it hurts and that the whole world sees. You can expect the same for Greece, and you can expect the same for France. And they know that because the will of the people is to be free, is to not be bankrupt. And we know that the youth in their country are highly unemployed in their countries. That they know all of the countries will want to begin to leave the European Union. And so they must make sure it hurts. So when they see freedom rising in the United States, when they see what they call protectionist ideals, an ideology of America first coming through in the United States, we see that the elite, these social planners, they don't like this. They don't like to see deglobalization because this has been their goal. This has been what they talk about, what they write about, what they're under scrutiny about, is taking control of the world governments. And what we see with America being prosperous again, with America manufacturing again, we're in for a much rougher road trying to leave that as possible, because they're going to make sure it hurts. And they're going to make sure that the whole world sees, which is why you need to take steps to prepare. They want to paint silver stackers and silver investors like they're crazy. Conspiracy theories, that's what they call it. That's the reason. Because they don't care about what happens to us. Which is why you need to take steps now. As we watch this credit bubble, this will be the worst collapse. What we're finding, these credit holdings they're toxic. Defaults are on the rise. They are at the highest level since 2008. And this is individual credit. And these too big to fail organizations, too big to fail, are going to collapse under the weight of the fact that people are just not paying these back. They have so much on their books that are toxic. All right, thank you guys for joining me. I thank you so much. Subscribe to the channel if you like the content. There'll be more videos just like this. Like the videos, share the videos. We have to get the word out. The best way to make a difference is to wake the masses up. And I thank you so much for joining me. And as always, stay vigilant and stay safe.